The casino's cruel truth. Why you'll always lose. Listen up, people tell you gambling's just for fun. Right? Don't play too much. They say that because if you play a lot, you can't win. You can't beat the house. Because we've already taken our cut from every damn hand. Think simple. What game takes the smallest percentage? Even Baccarat. It takes about 5% of your money each round. You play 40 hands. You don't win. You don't lose. Just break even? You're still down money. The bigger you play, the more you lose. And me? I ain't teaching anyone to burn cash on gambling. What you just heard, that's from Stanley Ho, the casino king of Macau. He's the billionaire who founded and chaired SJM Holdings, the company that owned 19 casinos there. You want to know how sharp Stanley Ho was to earn a title like Casino King? His motto says it all. You don't gamble, you win. His view on gambling? If you don't play, you haven't lost. He didn't gamble himself, and he didn't let his family near it either. He knew the rule. 10 gambles, 9 losses. In one TV interview, he said it straight. I always tell people the truth. Gambling should only be entertainment. Don't play too much, because if you play a lot, you won't necessarily win, but the house will still take its commission. I said it, but people don't listen. Even if you play 40 even hands, you still lose money. He admitted it himself. No matter how rich you are, you can't beat the casino. The gambling industry has a secret few know. We don't fear players winning. We fear them not playing. The casino knows if you keep playing, you'll eventually lose everything. So why do people still play? Are they crazy? Drugged? Addicted? The addiction trap. How it takes everything. Gambling addiction is a natural human weakness, especially among certain cultures. Of the 3 biggest vices, gambling, prostitution, and drugs, gambling is the most destructive force on a family. Drug addiction is bad, sure, but for billionaires, even if they're hooked, the current cost of drugs might not wipe out their entire fortune. But once you fall into the vortex of gambling, even if you have hundreds of millions or billions of dollars, you can still end up with nothing but debt. Remember this. Whether it's online or in person, gambling has the same destructive power. Some people lose all their money and go home. That means they still have some discipline left. But it's not uncommon to see someone lose, then get more money to keep playing, or even borrow to keep the game going. Why does this happen? Let me share a few real stories about gambling that might make you think. The Empty Life. Stories from the Pit. James Lee. The man WHO lost everything. Perhaps no one suffered from gambling as much as James Lee. He completely lost everyone's trust. James Lee never thought he'd end up like that. In 2011, he got into sports betting. The first time, he bet about a few $100s on a game and won over $1,000. The scariest thing about gamblers is their lack of awareness of value and their denial of the value of honest labor. In less than 3 months, James Lee won over $50,000, while his initial investment was only around $10,000. Working hard for a year, he'd struggled to save more than a few thousand. Yet, in such a short time, he made a fortune. James Lee decided to quit his stable job at a big construction company to focus solely on sports betting. That was the beginning of his downfall into bankruptcy. All his plans, all his stop-loss measures, were thrown out the window when he lost. At that moment, he just wanted to quickly win back his money. But that was just the pathetic illusion of a gambling addict. Ultimately, less than 3 months after he won over $50,000, James Lee was broke. He lost interest in everything, even finding a job. Despite many offers from companies, he didn't want to work. Even eating, paying electricity bills, and living expenses became increasingly difficult. The scariest thing was that James Lee completely denied the value of labor. He lost over $100,000, over 2/3 of which was borrowed from his parents and the bank. The massive debt, combined with the desire to win back what he lost, drove James Lee insane and self-destructive. He started borrowing from loan sharks in the market, with horrifying interest rates up to 3% per month. In less than 6 months, James Lee lost everything. By then, his credit cards couldn't cover the financial holes anymore. Banks were overdue on payments for over half a year and were preparing to sue him. At this point, James Lee had to pay over $8,000 each month, with interest alone over $3,000. If James Lee had confided in his family then, sought out friends to borrow money to pay off debts, and quit gambling, he still would have had a chance to restart his life. But no, James Lee hid it from his parents and sold their 130 square meter house. After paying off his loans, he was left with only about $8,000. Next, James Lee hid in a hotel for about a month. He turned off his phone and kept gambling. In his head, He only thought about winning back at least $80,000 to buy a small house and start over. Within a month, James Lee was down to $4,000. At this point, he planned to end it all. Feeling he couldn't face his parents, he wrote a letter and transferred the remaining $4,000 to his mother. Shaking with fear, he went to the top floor of the hotel to face his fate. James Lee despised himself. He wasn't afraid when gambling, but now he was scared to punch out. On the night he decided to drink for courage, his parents found his location through his reservation details. When he returned home, James Lee stayed in bed for 2 months, doing nothing. His family didn't blame him much. About a year after the tragedy, property values surged. James Lee's parents, who had worked tirelessly their whole lives to save money for his house, now bore the heavy consequences just because of their son. In just 2 or 3 short years, a well-off family fell into dire straits. After 6 months of despair, James Lee finally decided to quit gambling and rebuild his life. But years of denying the value of labor made it hard for him to start anew. He lived with his parents in their hometown for 6 months, working a job that paid less than $400 a month. The huge discrepancy from his previous life, coupled with peer pressure, made James Lee think punching out was still the better option. He felt like a complete failure. James Lee was 30 years old then. He had no home, no career, just an old car. He was completely broke because of gambling, and his marriage finally fell apart. For 14 years, he neglected his work, spending his days gambling and contemplating suicide. But then one day, his father came into his room and said, "Son, go back to your old city and start fresh. Find a small job, and gradually, things will be okay. Your mother and I will support you fully. Don't dwell on the past. Your mother and I have talked it over. We'll use our retirement money and rental income from the past few years to help you buy a small apartment. Around 70 square meters. Finally, James Lee decided to quit and restart his life. He knew that if he still had money, he wouldn't be able to control himself and would fall back into gambling. So, every month when he received his salary, he'd immediately transfer it to his mother to hold, only asking for about $12 a day for food. Besides that, he canceled all his credit cards. Currently, James Lee has been clean from gambling for 14 months. Even though his savings are only enough to watch a Premier League match or buy a room the size of a toilet in this big city, he can still confidently talk to his parents, buy them small gifts, look at himself in the mirror, and face himself, hopefully, in the rest of his life. James Lee can redeem all his mistakes. The 3 faces of a gambler. Why they can't stop. Before we dig deeper, don't forget to follow this channel for more truths about money and to help you quickly achieve financial freedom. My brother's insight. The true nature of addiction. My brother, he lived in Macau for years, worked in casinos. He knows why people, even knowing gambling destroys families and lives, still fall into it. It's human nature. People always carry greed. Workers always want to make more money. Lovers always want more affection from their partner. Those who strive for progress always want greater perfection. Even those content with an ordinary life still wish for a life without setbacks. So, everyone, in truth, has greed. My brother dealt with many gamblers. They owned assets that ordinary people could only dream of. One night of losing for them could equal a normal person's life savings. Some bosses would rather gamble away money than pay their employees who are months overdue. The casino's real customers aren't the small-time gamblers. They're the ones at the top of the food chain, holding the lives of ordinary working people in their hands. My brother used to tell some examples of his clients so you could understand the nature of gamblers better. Type 1. The adrenaline junkie. The first case my brother encountered was a young master, only 30 years old. Every month, he'd come to Macau, bringing about $200,000 to $400,000. First, he'd bet about $40,000 to $60,000 per hand. If he won, he'd keep betting the same amount. If he was on a roll, he'd immediately bet over $100,000. If he only had a few thousand left, he wouldn't hesitate to bet at all. The time from start to finish usually didn't exceed 20 minutes. Either he'd win hundreds of thousands, or he'd lose everything. For him, gambling was just about the thrill. He didn't care how much money he won, he cared about the excitement, the racing heart, and the ultimate euphoria when he finally got what he wanted. The moment of victory made him feel like the world was on his side. Favored by heaven. How many times in life do you get to experience that feeling? Simply put, no one knows the future. But when you beat the odds, you feel like you're holding the future, that everything will go your way. But the casino isn't afraid of guests like him. Because you can win 100 times, but just one loss, and you'll lose everything. both capital and profit. People like him will never accept defeat. In business, he might be very successful, but in the casino, he'll ultimately be a loser. Type 2. The dependent gambler. This story is about a businessman from a rural area, around 50 years old. Each time he visited, he'd bring about $300,000. Each time he played, he'd only bet a few $100s. If he won, he'd use the winnings to bet again. His strategy was very stable. No rush, no hot temper. Each time, he could win tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands. There was a period he won consistently for a whole month, sometimes winning thousands, sometimes over $100,000. He almost never lost. However, when his initial capital losses exceeded $8,000, he'd transform into a completely different person. He'd become extremely agitated and impulsive, betting thousands per hand. When his initial capital was regained, he'd go back to betting small. One time, after he'd lost several consecutive hands, it was the first time my brother saw him go insane. He started betting tens of thousands, but lost, and then he bet all his remaining money. In the end, he still lost everything. After that, he mortgaged his personal assets to continue gambling. In just 1 week, he lost over $3 million. He once said that in Macau casinos, as long as you're not too greedy, you can win big. But thinking back, his company only made about $400,000 to $600,000 in profit each year. Yet, just by gambling for 1 week in Macau, he could get an amount equivalent to a whole year's hard work. Gambling is terrifying because it easily makes you think all your previous efforts were worthless. Falling into such a delusion, you lose the motivation to earn money through honest labor. At the same time, it also makes you want to escape life. Even the most professional gamblers in this field cannot consistently profit from it. If you want to get rich through gambling, the only way is to open a casino yourself for long-term profit. Type 3. The Hollow Gambler. This is a story about two men. Let's call them Mr. C and Mr. D. They were both big clients, each owning personal assets worth hundreds of millions of dollars. But it's hard to believe they spent over 20 days a month gambling in Macau. To stay longer, they even moved their passports to the Philippines. Mr. C often played at MGM. He could sit in front of a slot machine for 12 hours straight without getting bored, even eating there. Meanwhile, Mr. D really liked baccarat, and he spent a lot of time at the gambling table. For him, winning wasn't very joyful, and if he lost, he didn't care too much either. Once, Mr. C told Mr. D, "These slot machines are bottomless pits. No amount of money is ever enough." Mr. D asked, "If you know that, why do you still play?" Mr. C replied, "Because besides this, I have no interest in anything else." Even my brother didn't understand this. They had so much money. They could do so many things. Why did they have to give it all to the casino? But later I understood. We often get tricked by famous successful people into thinking that all rich people are like Steve Jobs, or Jack Ma, or Warren Buffett. But the reality is, some people, when they have too much money, don't know what to do with it. They already have all the luxuries, enjoying every indulgence heaven has given them. They are content with the money they've earned. As for charity, they think, my money is my money. Why should I donate it? So what do they do then? They gamble. They're not short on money anyway. But beneath that veneer of self-indulgence at the betting table, there's just a rotten soul. Ultimately, Mr. C accumulated tens of millions in debt, and Mr. D continued to sink into gambling. The casino's bait. Why you'll get hooked. What I've just told you reflects human nature when it comes to gambling. Next, I'll talk about the external factors that impact it. Anyone who's been to Macau will know casinos have many attractive offers that make you want to return repeatedly. You'll get a gambling membership card to earn points, which you can then redeem for phones, hotel rooms, etc. In VIP rooms, there will often be hosts who bring in big clients. If you come to play, they'll arrange everything: hotels, transportation, even meals. And if you play big, they'll even send a helicopter to pick you up. Sometimes, they even help you shop more thoughtfully than a personal assistant. Perhaps many visitors don't know that most VIP rooms are operated by gambling brokers. Once they trust your ability, they'll readily lend you money from the casino. If you win, you can cash out immediately. If you lose, they'll give you time to pay. This has become a very thriving business. If you find the betting limit at the table too low and want to increase the stake, you can participate in bigger bets like Dragon 2 inches or Dragon 3. Bets can even go up to tens of millions of dollars. If you love gambling but are hesitant to go to Macau, no problem. There's a phone betting service here. You just need to install a baccarat app. They'll inform you of the score of each hand. You just need to say how much you're betting, and they'll follow. Speaking of which, are you wondering why so many people are obsessed with baccarat? Is it because it's fair? Wrong. It's because it has a pattern. This pattern is the most sophisticated form of deception in the world, making every baccarat player believe they can predict the game's flow. Beyond gambling, what else is Macau famous for? Its luxury clothing stores, jewelry shops, and nightclubs. Nightclubs in Macau have the top beautiful girls, even a coalition of 8 nations from all over the world. You're very easily swept up in the extravagant, frivolous atmosphere of this place. Every store tempts you to pull out your wallet and spend money. The surrounding casinos are like ATM machines with time bombs, beckoning you friendly. Oh, almost forgot to mention this. You'll be surprised to find that most of the restaurants around the casinos don't sell Portuguese or Hong Kong food. Instead, they're restaurants from all over mainland China, Northeast, Sichuan, Hunan, Shanghai, etc. These familiar dishes are thoughtfully served to guests from China. And the biggest difference between Macau and Hong Kong is that Hong Kong people are somewhat arrogant when facing Chinese guests. But Macau people are the opposite. When they meet guests from the mainland, they're willing to bow, showing utmost respect. Although deep down, they don't necessarily look down on mainlanders. But whoever has money, that person is king. Honestly, I've never truly liked Macau. It's a city that clearly embodies money first. Although it's somewhat more luxurious when comparing Macau to Shanghai, Macau is still where human pragmatism is expressed to its absolute extreme. Even though my brother worked in the gambling industry, I still sincerely advise you to stay away from it. Gambling is a toxic thing, and it can lead you to a death you won't even realize. The path to ruin. The 4 stages of a gambler. Why do people have to lose everything before they leave? Some even borrow money to keep playing. Because of one simple phrase: as long as there's breath, there's a chance to win it back. Most gamblers don't want to admit they're losers. Most people don't truly understand the gambling demons around us. We've never understood why our loved ones and familiar friends gradually transform into such terrifyingly greedy and ugly individuals. A true gambling addict isn't born that way. They were once normal people like all of us. Just by chance, a little greed, they were gradually drawn into the abyss of gambling. Someone once recounted how a black market casino operates somewhere. In reality, it's not a casino, it's a scamming syndicate disguised as a casino. Everyone there plays different roles. And players don't lose money because of gambling, but because they're being scammed. So, if you go to a legitimate casino, like in Macau, will you avoid the tragedy of losing everything to the point of borrowing to keep playing? The answer is absolutely not. Gambling will eventually lead to shattered homes, broken families, and lost fortunes. Instead of saying, gamble 10, lose 9, you should say, gamble 10, lose 10. Casinos in Las Vegas and Macau operate differently from black market casinos. They don't need to spend too much time or effort to scam a target because they apply the principle of the big tree. This detail will be explained later. The main issue here is that many people don't truly understand gambling or the psychology of gambling addicts. That's why many people can't understand and help their loved ones or friends escape gambling. Even leading organizations fighting gambling can't help much because they don't truly understand. Gambling addicts all know it's not gambling, it's a scam. So, is it okay to gamble if you just find a legitimate and fair casino? No. Let's look at the process of how a normal person, a loved one of yours, transforms into a terrifying gambling addict. This process can be divided into 4 stages. Stage 1. The alert stage. When they first enter the casino, everyone is very cautious. Initially, they only bet extremely small amounts, mainly for entertainment. When they win a few $100s, they tell themselves they have to stop. At this point, most people can still control themselves. But just one lucky win of $4,000, and they start dreaming that every time they come to the casino, they can win $4,000 and leave. Macau doesn't just have gambling, it also has many other entertainment activities. But that's beside the point. You'll gradually fall into the cycle of chasing that $4,000 with every play. Throughout this process, you'll have a few lucky times where you sit down, win $4,000, and leave. You'll achieve that easily. But then there will be times when you win $1,000 to $3,000. And it's not enough for your goal. So you keep playing, and then you start losing. Before that, you had won, so you refuse to stop. You're determined to keep playing to win it back. And the result is you win again. So you've accumulated more gambling experience. Even if you're down $8,000, you'll try to win it back. If you only win $4,000, you won't leave. You keep losing and winning back. Throughout this process, Two important changes occur. First, the amount you bet gets bigger and bigger. Because when you're down $8,000 and want to win it back, you're forced to increase your bets. Second, you gain more experience from losing $4,000, $8,000, or even $12,000 and winning it back. But remember, these experiences are only accumulating, waiting for the next time they can destroy you. Perhaps by now, you still don't fully understand the danger of these experiences. For example, there was a guy gambling in Macau. One time, he only had about $400 left. At that moment, he was frustrated, furious, and thought of betting all his remaining money on pair in baccarat. Just to get it over with. Pair is a bet predicting that two cards, either the dealers or the players, will be a pair, with a winning probability of 1 to 11. Of course, anyone who knows probability knows the actual odds are around 1 to 13. But miraculously, that time he hit the pair and turned the tide, winning big. After that time, whenever he only had his last few chips, he would always bet on pair, but he never hit it again. Later, he recalculated and realized the amount he had bet on pair had accumulated to over $4,000 compared to the amount he had once won. Ultimately, he lost everything. If he hadn't hit that first time, he wouldn't have kept betting like this. This is the danger of accumulating experience for a gambling addict. Stage 2. The fall. In the second stage, every gambler experiences disappointment after their first big play at the casino. That day, he lost $12,000. At that moment, memories from previous experiences resurfaced. Last time I lost $12,000 but still won it back. So there's nothing to worry about. I just need to wait for luck to come to me again. In baccarat, every outcome can be predicted, and luck is just results programmed by rules. Like betting on pair, helping gamblers turn the tide. But this time, he seemed unable to win. The more he played, the more he lost. Even his initial capital was depleted. This was the first time he felt a decline in his gambling career. And this loss marked a significant turning point, making him a true gambler. This explains why people have to lose everything before they leave the casino. People don't want to lose, they always believe they'll win again. Those beliefs aren't strong enough to keep them playing, but the experience of winning thousands, or recovering thousands, makes them unable to give up. Even if they have only $1 left, they have to bet it, because that's their last glimmer of hope to win it all back. Stage 3. The compensating stage. In the third stage, they start compensating. What's compensating here? It's when everything collapses like the sky falling. You have to find a way to remedy the damage you've caused. After heavy losses, the gambler tries every possible way to fill their financial holes. Humans are greedy creatures, money in their pockets. If they have to take it out, they feel immense regret. In Macau, there's a story about a man who used $40,000 to win over $1 million. The very next day, he continued gambling and lost all $1,040,000. Eventually, he jumped off a building and committed suicide because he felt he had lost everything. Now you understand, right? After experiencing a major collapse, the gambler only thinks about winning it back. They always tell themselves, when I win back the money I lost last time, I'll never gamble again. But gamblers have made that vow countless times because they keep losing big. For example, when they lose $800,000, sober gamblers realize they can't win it back in one go. They start planning to compensate. If they can't win it all back at once, then they'll divide it into 10 attempts, winning back $80,000 each time. And so, they get caught in an endless cycle of gambling. This story clearly shows the psychological dependence of gamblers and the unpredictable dangers of gambling. Gambling not only robs people of their reason but also plunges them into a bottomless abyss, destroying family happiness and corrupting society. Therefore, banning gambling is to protect people from falling into this trap, to maintain a sober and healthy life. Hopefully, through these real stories, many will realize the harm of gambling and stay away from it. Stage 4. The wipeout stage. Gambling is not just a simple entertainment, it's a bottomless pit. Stanley Ho's story and James Lee's experience clearly show the unpredictable consequences of gambling for individuals, families, and society. As Stanley Ho once said, "You don't gamble, you win." This is a valuable lesson learned from his many years of experience. Those who are immersed in gambling often have a subjective mindset about luck. They think they can win and get back what they've lost. But the reality is, the deeper they go, the more they can't escape. Banning gambling is not only to maintain social order but also to protect the happiness and peace of every family. I hope you and I always remain sober, stay away from gambling, and cherish the happy life we have now.